Elia's thorn groaned as a steel beam pressed into his shoulder, the kind of discomfort that made him wish someone would invent a gravity-free coffee shop just for soldiers. Dust filled the air like a glittering apocalypse, and somewhere above, the collapsed bridge's fractured supports groaned like a cosmic accordion. He tried shifting his rifle with one hand, muttering, "Come on, you oversized paperweight," only for it to squeak mockingly back at him. Around him, the battlefield hummed with the chaotic symphony of war, energy pulses striking crumbling buildings, human soldiers ducking behind makeshift cover, and alien drones weaving through the smoke like metallic spiders on a caffeine binge. A low hum interrupted his whining, subtle at first, like a tuning fork somewhere deep in his skull. Then it grew sharper, a resonance that made the hairs on his arms stand at attention. He squinted toward the sky, half expecting a particularly angry cloud to descend and lecture him on battlefield etiquette. Instead, he saw her, Lysera. Hovering above the ruins in her silverlit craft, her hair danced like liquid starlight, and her long, sensitive ears twitched, catching every whisper of the world below. She looked human, almost dangerously so, except for those ears, which reminded him vaguely of a rabbit auditioning for a royal guard. Her eyes scanned the debris with a calculating precision that made him want to both salute and apologize at the same time. She frowned, and a subtle ripple of energy pulsed from her ship. The beam holding him down seemed to soften, as if obeying her mood rather than any law of physics. "Well, that's new," Elias muttered, lifting an eyebrow as his shoulder freed itself enough for him to shift upright. His first thought was that he had been rescued by a very judgmental cloud. His second thought was that this cloud could probably vaporize his entire squad if she wanted. "Do you take requests?" he asked, his voice thick with dust and sarcasm. Lysera's lips curved just slightly. She descended, hovering with the grace of a dancer who had been trained in zero-gravity ballroom for centuries. Around her, alien soldiers bristled, wings of energy snapping in warning, but she waved a single hand, and the air itself seemed to hum a halt. Laser beams froze mid-flight like stubborn fireflies caught in amber. For a heartbeat, the war stopped, the battlefield a frozen painting of destruction and improbability. Elias coughed and dusted himself off, muttering, "Ceasefire, huh? That's the first good news I've had all day, and the second good news is that I'm still alive. Third might be the free coffee if someone ever invents it." Lysera hovered closer, her ears flicking with interest at the human's absurd commentary. She tilted her head slightly, as if deciphering a complex code encoded entirely in bad humor and survival instinct. "You are the one trapped beneath the bridge," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight that made Elias want to apologize preemptively for being human. "Your survival is inconvenient," she added, which he took as the universe's way of telling him that sarcasm was still welcome, even from potential intergalactic executioners. "I call it adventuring with style," he replied. "Also, it's cheaper than therapy and you get a great view of collapsing infrastructure." She didn't laugh, which surprised him. Most humans would have found that line ridiculous, but maybe alien humor was subtler, or maybe her idea of comedy involved moral quandaries. "Move aside," she said, gesturing, and the debris shifted again, obeying some law of physics that apparently depended on her mood rather than math. Elias rolled out, landing in a heap, and immediately noticed the humor of being alive but looking like a dust-covered pancake. His helmet had developed an inconvenient dent, and his rifle now resembled a particularly angry ferret. "Thanks," he muttered, brushing grit off his sleeve. "I owe you one. Well, maybe not my life directly, more like my limbs and sarcasm. Those are negotiable." Lysera's ears twitched, and for a moment, Elias considered that she might be judging his sense of humor with forensic precision. Then she extended a hand, the gesture almost human, almost kind, almost infuriatingly alien. Why did you stop the attack?" he asked, curiosity bleeding into his voice. Around them, soldiers from both sides were cautiously peeking from cover, unsure whether the world had gone mad. Lysera glanced at him, her eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in a calculation Elias would have bet entire stars on. "Honor," she said finally, "compassion, something that appears to be rare among your kind, and curiosity. Perhaps you may survive because you are interesting." Elias blinked, unsure whether to feel complimented or insulted. He opted for both. "Interesting is my middle name." Well, second middle name, technically, but let's not split hairs in the middle of a potential genocide. A brief silence followed, the kind that feels like the universe holding its breath, and then the air shifted again as if reality itself had shrugged. Lysera lowered her craft to the level of the rubble, and with the ease of someone who had done this more times than he wanted to consider, she helped him to his feet. "Stay behind me," she said, and Elias noticed her subtle maneuvers. A slight flick of her ears detected unstable gravity fields, a wave of her hand projected shielding where bullets hadn't even reached yet, and the way her presence alone seemed to reorder chaos into something almost polite. He followed, muttering, "You know, most heroes wear capes or something. You hover dramatically and make my life slightly less likely to end. That'll do, I guess." She didn't answer, but Elias imagined her ears twitching in a way that might have been alien laughter. The two of them moved through the wreckage, an unlikeliest pair. A human soldier with a taste for sarcasm and an alien warrior with ears that could detect a heartbeat from miles away. Around them, the battlefield remained a chaotic mess, yet for the first time, Elias felt a strange kind of safety, not because the war had stopped entirely, but because someone had chosen to see him as more than collateral damage. And somewhere above, the alien fleet waited, sensing the ripple of an impossible choice. One warrior had paused a war and in doing so had rewritten the rules of engagement with nothing more than honor, curiosity, and maybe a sense of humor that humans could only guess at. Elias adjusted his helmet, shrugged, and muttered, "Well, I guess surviving the apocalypse now comes with polite company." And Lysera, hovering silently beside him, allowed the smallest curve of a smile to brush her lips, her ears flicking like twin signals of a universe that had just decided to be a little stranger, a little kinder, and most surprisingly, a little funnier than Elias had ever imagined. Elias Thorne staggered along behind Lysera, trying to maintain a posture that suggested competence rather than the dusty pancake impression he had perfected under the bridge. Every step was a negotiation with gravity, debris, and the faintly hostile terrain that had decided to decorate itself with jagged metal spikes and glowing fissures. "You know," he said, keeping one eye on her ears that twitched with alarming sensitivity, "I never thought I'd get rescued by someone with better hearing than a radar array. Makes my allergies feel underachieving." Lysera didn't reply, but the faint twitch at the corner of her lips suggested she had registered his humor. Elias wasn't sure if she was amused, calculating, or plotting to test his sanity. Probably all three. Above them, alien drones hovered with meticulous patience, scanning the battlefield for any stray bullets or bad jokes that might warrant immediate annihilation. Elias muttered to himself, "They really need to loosen up, maybe throw a disco party or something, adds morale, you know. Do you always speak in riddles and sarcasm when trapped under rubble?" Lysera's voice was calm, but the way her ears flicked upward indicated an alertness that made him want to salute and apologize simultaneously. "Only on days ending with Y," he said, adjusting his helmet with a practiced nonchalance. "Also, when my life is potentially at stake, and I'm trying to figure out if my rescuer has a sense of humor or just enjoys watching humans squirm." Lysera hovered slightly closer, scanning the ruins ahead. Her long ears twitched independently, tracking sounds he couldn't hear. A faint shiver in the metal girders, the low hum of anti-gravity fields, and a distant alien squad approaching at what seemed like subsonic speed. "Humans are unpredictable," she said, almost to herself. Elias tilted his head. "Ah, yes, the species that invents flying pizza delivery drones, then wonders why the pizza sometimes ends up orbiting Mars. I relate." Lysera's eyes narrowed slightly, and he wasn't sure if that was judgment or amusement. Both seemed dangerous in equal measure. They moved through the ruins, a strange team of improbable allies. Elias tested his footing on a hovering shard of concrete and nearly did an unplanned somersault. Lysera's hand flicked, and the shard stabilized with a faint hum, saving him from a spectacularly humiliating moment. "Thanks," he muttered, brushing himself off. "I like my death more subtle, preferably with coffee, not airborne concrete." "Your humor is persistent," Lysera said, and Elias imagined her ears twitching like tiny radars scanning for sarcasm. He took it as a compliment, or a warning, or both. As they moved, the battlefield revealed its surreal side. Crumbling skyscrapers had half collapsed into gravity wells that looped back on themselves, rivers of glowing liquid metal snaked through ruined streets, and floating advertisements for interstellar vacations glitched midair, offering holiday packages on planets no human had yet survived. Elias squinted at one of the holograms. "Sign me up for a beach on Gliza G," he muttered. "I like my vacations hot, radioactive, and slightly explosive, very relaxing." Lysera didn't respond, but her ears flicked sharply, likely detecting that a squad of alien mercenaries had picked up their trail. She changed course abruptly, moving with a grace that was both fluid and absurdly calculated. "Stay close," she warned. "They will follow." Elias rolled his eyes, muttering, "Follow, yes, because nothing says subtle like glowing energy cannons and bad hair days for the enemy." They reached a narrow alley littered with debris, and Elias paused, noticing a floating creature resembling a jellyfish made entirely of neon circuitry. It pulsed with bright colors, occasionally sparking tiny arcs that made him flinch. "Okay," he said, "that's definitely not in the handbook. Is it dangerous or just festive?" Lysera's ears twitched again, mostly curious, but curiosity can kill. Elias laughed, the sound bouncing off fractured walls. "Then it's basically my life motto. So far, so good, right?" As they pressed forward, Elias realized something remarkable. This alien warrior, the one with ears that seemed capable of detecting even his sneaky thoughts, had created a bubble of safety around them. Not because she had stopped the war entirely, far from it, but because she had decided against logic, orders, and common sense that he was worth saving. "You're different from your soldiers," he said cautiously, glancing at her profile. Her eyes glinted in the glow of fractured streetlights. "Different." "Yes," he said. "You actually pause to save someone, you make jokes, sort of, and your ears twitch in a very expressive way." She didn't respond immediately, only scanned the alley as if reading invisible maps. Then she spoke carefully, almost academically. "We are trained to kill efficiently. I am trained to survive efficiently. Compassion is an anomaly, not a protocol." Elias nodded sagely. "Compassion good for morale, terrible for paperwork, I get it." A sudden vibration beneath them made both freeze. The alley's metallic floor shuddered as rogue mercenaries materialized around the corner. Elias' first instinct was to duck. His second was to make a joke about the fashion sense of aliens who wear energy armor like high-tech Christmas ornaments. Lysera, however, moved with effortless precision. Her ears twitched, picking up the faintest vibrations, and she activated a field that distorted gravity just enough to make the attackers stumble and slide like they were on a zero-gravity ice rink. Elias blinked, impressed. "Okay, I admit it," he said, grinning through dust and sweat. "You make saving a guy look like an art form also hilarious." He glanced at him, expression unreadable. "Do not mistake efficiency for amusement," she said. Elias raised his hands in mock surrender. "Efficiency, amusement, call it a win-win, you'll thank me later." They moved past the confused mercenaries, Elias sliding under a partially collapsed wall while Lysera lifted him with a single gesture when the floor threatened to betray him. The city around them twisted in impossible angles, floating chunks of debris rotating like planets in a miniature orbit, and holographic projections flickered with messages no human soldier could fully comprehend. Yet amidst all the chaos, the most surreal thing was the strange, growing sense of camaraderie between them. "You're not like any alien I've fought," Elias said quietly, keeping pace. "Most of them just shoot first, ask questions, never. You actually talk, think, and maybe listen. Dangerous combo." Lysera didn't answer but flicked her hand, causing a wall of energy to rise, shielding them from the approaching danger. Elias, realizing that words weren't necessary here, muttered, "Fine. Actions speak louder than sarcasm anyway." As they moved into the relative safety of a partially intact building, Elias took a moment to look at her, really look. Her hair shimmered as if holding fragments of the stars themselves, and those ears, they moved independently, perceiving, predicting, and protecting in ways no human sense could fathom. "I think we're going to survive," he said with a grin, dust dripping off his helmet like confetti. Lysera tilted her head. "Perhaps." Her voice was calm, almost musical, and for the first time, Elias suspected that maybe, just maybe, they had begun something neither had expected. A partnership born in the middle of war, threaded with humor, trust, and survival instincts that defied logic. And somewhere above, the alien fleet's hum persisted, a quiet reminder that the universe was still at war, still chaotic and still impossibly funny. At least for those clever enough to survive with a grin and a long pair of ears, twitching just enough to notice everything. Elias Thorne crouched behind a jagged chunk of floating concrete, his helmet scuffed, his uniform streaked with soot, and his nerves tingling like he'd downed 3 hyper-caffeinated drinks too quickly. Lysera hovered a meter above him, her long ears twitching in a slow, deliberate rhythm, scanning the horizon. "We're being followed," she said calmly, almost as if stating the obvious, though the distorted alien gravity fields and flickering energy weapons closing in made the situation anything but obvious. Elias squinted at the advancing mercenary squad, whose armor glimmered like bad holiday lights, and muttered, "Followed? I was hoping for something more polite. Maybe a handwritten note saying, 'Hey, we might shoot you later.'" Lysera didn't respond, only flicked a hand, and the air shimmered. Tiny anti-gravity pulses caused the approaching mercenaries to stumble and drift sideways, creating a chaotic dance of confused aliens that made Elias snicker despite the danger. "See," he whispered, "gravity is my friend now, mostly, well, temporarily." They darted through a partially collapsed plaza where gravity wells twisted unpredictably, making even the smallest movements feel like running through a funhouse of distorted physics. Elias nearly collided with a floating vending machine advertising interstellar snacks that promised protein bars that might explode guaranteed. He snatched one, ripped it open, and grimaced at the taste, which was vaguely radioactive and suspiciously crunchy. "Diet of champions," he muttered, tossing the remainder to a drifting piece of debris. Lysera's ears twitched, and for a moment Elias imagined she was silently judging his snack choices. "Keep moving," she said, and he complied, sliding under a tilted beam with the grace of a panicked ferret. Lysera followed, seemingly weightless, her hair shimmering like liquid starlight and her ears picking up even the faintest vibration of approaching danger. Elias realized that her perception wasn't just extraordinary, it was absurdly precise. "You know," he said breathlessly, "if we survive this, I owe you probably my sanity and maybe a coffee, or 5. "We do not survive by idle chatter," she replied, but her ears twitched in a way that almost suggested amusement. As they reached a narrow alleyway leading to the ruins of an old orbital elevator, Elias paused. The sky above shimmered with a strange aurora caused by the ongoing energy battles overhead. "You ever wonder," he asked, "if the universe just watches us for entertainment, like cosmic reality TV?" Lysera didn't answer immediately, then she spoke softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps, but survival is not a spectacle, it is necessity." Elias grinned despite himself. "Necessity with commentary, maybe. Keep your ears on me. I provide excellent narration." The mercenaries appeared again, closing in from multiple angles. Elias ducked as a pulse cannon discharged, sending a shockwave that knocked him into a low-gravity puddle of molten metal. He flailed comically for a moment and Lysera's hand flicked, creating a protective energy dome around him. "Not that way, genius," she said dryly. "Try up." Elias rolled his eyes, muttering, "Up. Right, thanks for the vague guidance, oh wise and long-eared one." With her guidance, they navigated the deadly maze, twisting through floating debris and unstable gravity zones, until they reached a partially intact landing pad where a small escape craft waited, humming with interstellar energy. Elias was halfway inside before realizing he hadn't thanked her properly. "You know, for all the hovering, ear-twitching, life-saving, I never said thanks. Seriously, I mean it. You saved my life, stopped a war temporarily, and somehow made surviving look elegant." Lysera's eyes flickered, and for a heartbeat, Elias thought he saw the faintest smile. "Your gratitude is noted. Survival is sufficient payment." As the escape craft lifted off, the battlefield spread below them like a chaotic painting of fire, smoke, and glowing fissures. Elias leaned against the console, marveling at the improbability of it all. "You ever feel," he asked, "that maybe wars are like bad vacations? Explosions, weird terrain, no real coffee, and a high chance of death." Lysera's ears twitched, catching every nuance in his voice. Human perspective is humorous, yet insightful. The craft soared into a calm corridor above the city, avoiding patrols with precise maneuvers guided by Lysera's keen perception. For the first time, Elias felt a strange sense of peace, even amid the chaos that still raged below. "You know," he said, "I never thought I'd trust an alien, much less one with ears that should probably be a national treasure or at least listed as hazardous weapons. Lysera's ears flicked. Trust is situational. You have proven adaptable. They floated above the shattered cityscape, silence stretching between them, punctuated only by the hum of the craft. Elias realized that he had changed. He wasn't just a soldier relying on reflex and luck anymore. He had learned to observe, to cooperate, to trust, even with someone who had been trained to see him as the enemy. He could joke while fighting, and he could survive while learning to respect another perspective, alien though it was. The craft entered the orbiting transport hub, a chaotic jumble of ships from multiple species, none entirely at peace with each other. Elias disembarked carefully, adjusting his uniform and helmet. Lysera hovered beside him, scanning the crowd with her precise, methodical attention. A human officer approached, eyes wide. "Captain Thorne, you how?" Elias shrugged, grinning. "Long story, very long, ears involved, coffee optional." The officer blinked, uncertain whether to be amazed or question his sanity. Lysera extended a hand almost ceremoniously. "Do not underestimate collaboration." Elias took it, shaking firmly. Collaboration, sarcasm, and the occasional risky maneuver. Got it. They parted ways briefly as the hub buzzed with activity, but Elias knew their paths would cross again. The war was far from over, but the choice Lysera had made to halt a battle, to save a human, to act with honor and curiosity, had rewritten his understanding of loyalty, courage, and even humor. He wasn't just surviving. He was learning to live differently, to appreciate that life could be more than orders, protocols, and explosions. As the hub's energy shields hummed and alien vessels drifted lazily in low orbit, Elias looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the chaos and debris, possibilities stretched infinitely. And somewhere in the galaxy, a long-eared alien warrior had shown him that compassion, cleverness, and a well-timed joke could be as powerful as any weapon. Elias grinned, brushing dust from his hands. "Well, universe," he muttered, "thanks for the reminder. I'm alive, still sarcastic, and apparently part of the most bizarre alliance ever recorded." Coffee. Lysera's ears twitched once faintly, and he could swear it was acknowledgement. Perhaps the universe was listening after all, and perhaps it even had a sense of humor. He took